thank you for all the things. Thank you for everything we had through your son. We thank you for our county. We pray for our sheriff's department, EMS, and our fire department, that you'll keep them from harm's way. We pray for our military men and women around the world that is fighting for our freedom, that we might stand here today and pray, salute the flag. We pray for our world leaders, Father, that they would come together, stop the war, and that we would have peace. Not only can do that through you. Be with this meeting tonight. Just give each one the words to say, that we might do the right thing for Hendry County. And everything we do and say, we give you praise. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
This is a regular meeting of the Hendry County Board of County Commissioners being held on Tuesday, March 22nd, 2022 at
End of the table. And we ask that when you do speak, try to maintain to 3 minutes. Thank you so much. First things up on the agenda is bids.
Can you speak a little louder? I'm sorry, we're having trouble hearing you guys.
Okay, is that better?
I don't think there's anything out there.
Mic check.
Is that better?
We'll try again.
Okay.
Thank you.
So once again, I was saying that if you want to speak, there are cards at the end of the table right there. Please fill them out and return them to the clerk. The first thing on the agenda is bids.
I make a motion to accept bid A, option 1, A and B.
Second that.
Motion by Commissioner Harris, second by Commissioner Wells. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed. Next thing up is the agenda. We're gonna pull C2 for this. Are we still under bids? I'm sorry. Okay. We have B under bids now. I apologize. Thank you.
She's looking at
Old County Line District 4 corners, right?
Yes.
I move to accept.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Harris, second by Commissioner Turner. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. We still on bids.
Just to be clear, with each of the ones you're approving, if you just state which item it is, because there's 3 bids. So the first one was the
Okay.
paving or the?
First one was the
This particular item because it's held at the marina. So that means you cannot vote.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the item as presented.
Motion by Commissioner Turner, second by Commissioner York, all in favor? Motion passes. There's nothing on the award. There's nothing on the awards at this time. We're going into public hearing concerning the cemetery.
So we've had some issues over the years with cemeteries as far as who can buy at the resident rate, and then once a lot is owned by somebody, who can they allow to be placed in there? If they bought it at the resident rate, are they restricted in any way? Just letting anybody, be buried there. So we wanted to clear that up. That was the main thing we were trying to do going into this amendment. So we decided to, and I say we, the various staff got together to talk about this. Decided to make it so that the resident rate is available to residents, and the only non-residents who would be entitled to the lower resident rate would be the, say right here, we've got the parent, children, child, or spouse of a person who's already buried in the cemetery. That's an important distinction as compared with somebody who might be a parent. It's unlikely you have a spouse of a resident who lives outside the county, but you could have a parent outside the county of a resident, and you could have a child of a resident outside the county. And so the idea would be the child or the parent who lives outside the county could only get the resident rate if they've already got that family member in the cemetery buried. In other words, they can't buy it themselves, their family member's deceased. And so they could get it at the resident rate. But if everybody's still alive, the resident would need to make the purchase, as opposed to the out-of-town parent or the out-of-town child making the purchase in order to get the resident rate. We're trying to police it a little bit better to make sure that people really are eligible, and we're making the resident come in and make the purchase is the idea. So that's one change. Related changes to narrow the list of people that are entitled to the resident rate. So we took out grandparents, grandchildren, and step relationships, and limited it to blood, adoption, or legal guardianship. Now, people who are other more distant family, or step family, or grandparents, that kind of, they can still get a lot. They just got to pay the non-resident rate. The idea. And so,
So Mark, clarify that again. So if I divorce my wife and marry somebody with a child, and that child becomes my stepchild, are you saying that they're going to pay a non-resident rate?
well, if your wife is a resident, then she will be able to buy. Well, first of all, if your stepchild lives in Hendry, then they're a resident. But if they live out of Hendry, your wife, who's the mother of the child, could still buy it, but you as the step-parent couldn't buy it.
Even though he's a resident.
Who's a resident?
He didn't move, he just got divorced.
He got divorced, but the child is not his child, it's his wife's child. If his wife's a resident, she can make the purchase as the...
That's kind of what we talk about when, the discussion I have with that is a stepchild. The stepchild's my child. If I marry someone, that child becomes my child.
Maybe, not necessarily, not legally. They're not. They still have a father, maybe, or unless you adopt them.
Again, say I have my stepchild in my vehicle. My wife and I and my stepchild are traveling. There was an accident. We were all three killed. A stepchild can't be buried with his mother and myself as a resident.
That's what we said. That's the draft that we prepared.
I don't agree
That
with
need to be
that.
scratched. We need a
Madam Chair, let me ask a different question. So, and Mark, I don't know if you know the volume, but what are we trying to prevent here, and what's the price difference? I think what we're trying to prevent is our cemetery plots filling up with non-Hendry County residents because they're getting a very good bargain buster rate to go and be buried in a cemetery somewhere. Is that correct?
Right, I think that is it.
Okay.
Supply.
What's the price difference?
Well, it's $700 for a resident, $2,500 for non-resident.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
This conversation come up several years back, actually, back when I was actually working in the cemeteries. And the situation was we had folks coming from Palm Beach County,
we had folks come from Lee County, and they were purchasing lots, because our lots were so much cheaper. So at the rate that our cemeteries are filling up, Forty Nose just about there, you know, the new Harlem Cemetery opened. But Ridgeline is gonna be in the same situation, it's gonna be landlocked. So we're trying to make sure that our residents who live here have first rights to those lots at a better price.
Absolutely.
That was the whole conversation, yes, sir.
Do we not feel that we can, is staff not able to, and I know it's a sensitive time whenever someone loses a loved one, but how do you pry, especially if they're coming in on a proactive manner, there is no death involved, how do you engage in that and say, show me your homestead or show me your address? I mean, how does that all play out?
License. When we meet the families, we'd ask for a license showing your address to show that you are a Hendry County resident. That's been that way for many, many years.
Are a majority of the lots not purchased previous, they purchased like as the process occurs?
Mostly.
Okay.
In the past, you would see lots, and this is many years back, you'd see the lots that have, they'd purchase 6 or 8 lots at a time. And then another family would come in and purchase 6 or 8 lots at a time. But what the specific plan was is to, again, save the properties for Hendry County residents, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I see where it's real sticky with, you know, a stepchild versus that, you know,
But if that.
some families can't stand each other. Some of them love their other ones, you know, so I don't know how you.
Can we change that?
You can do whatever you want, it's your ordinance.
Let's do it.
But-
Well, but you already have steps that are allowed. The
Yeah.
idea was to limit, you know, and under the scenario, I don't know who said the scenario, I guess it was Commissioner Wells. I mean, if well, it's actually Commissioner Iglesias. So you divorce your wife and you get
I remarry.
and she already has a child.
Correct.
And so you live with your wife, so she's a resident, your new wife, you live with her.
Right.
And so she's a resident, so she can get the lot for her child. She doesn't need for you to get the lot for her child, she can get it.
So why have the language in there of step
So-
relationship? That's what kind of.
So it's to, I think the idea is to, there could be a scenario though where a step,
I do understand, I have 4 stepchildren, and I don't live in Henry County. So, you know, they might come in and say, hey, would you give me a lot? But they live in Palm Beach County. So,
right,
but
so,
if they're a resident of Henry County, they should be able to get that lot. But if they live in Palm Beach County, they, you know, they should get it in that county they live in.
oh, or they can get in Hendry, but they just gotta pay the higher rate.
Higher rate.
That's the idea.
But what about what Mitch said?
Which
The
was
thread
what?
was killed in the car wreck.
Well, okay, so a couple is married, the child of one of them, but not the other of them, dies. All of them die. I'm just trying to understand the scenario. So, who's a resident, who's not?
Well, if it's a stepchild, you're saying the stepchild, we're saying stepchildren can't be buried as a resident rate.
Well, if they were
So-
residents, they
So
can.
if we all 3 died,
Who's a resident?
my aunt came in to buy the lots, or my sister, my brother, they're purchased for Hendry County residents,
Who's a resident? Of the 3 people who died, is any of them a resident?
all of them,
Okay, well, they all get the rate.
So then they get.
but they're stepchildren.
So, they're a resident. It doesn't matter, they're a stepchild, they're a resident.
All right.
So what trumps it is whether or not they are a resident. So this.
Yeah, if you're a resident, you're in on all the time, if you're a resident.
But it means like if you got a family and it's 2 separate families, they might live in another county, and he's saying they come in, they have to get a regular rate.
How many people bought plots last year, Madam Chair? Not to cut you off, I apologize for that. But how many people bought lots, and how many of them were from out of county?
It's hard to,
We don't have that on a database anywhere. Off the hip, how many lots were purchased last year?
You know, with COVID.
So we don't have a software system that lets us know how many cemetery plots we sold in 2022 or 2023 or 2021. Yeah, I think that would be interesting to know. I mean, are we talking about 10 isolated incidents, or are we talking about 150?
it's a lower number.
More than 150?
Non-residents? Right. It's a lower number on the non-residents.
10, probably about 10.
The majority of those have been original.
I would guess between 150 and 200 lots a year at the $700. Yeah, that's
Yes.
what I would just.
Yes.
From the.
But
That's
now
a-
for the
that's a
2,500, it's probably less than 10.
Right.
The language.
Because they don't want to pay the rate. They want to get the resident rate, which is the issue we are always encountering is they're saying, well, let me in because, and like the scenario that started all this was.
Yeah, what was the catalyst?
So this was a person who lived in Miami who died.
Imagine Miami-Dade coming up to Hendry, yeah.
And it was a he, I think, and his mother was buried already in a Hendry County cemetery. And so but he had no living family left in Hendry. Immediate family left in Hendry. So he was a non-resident. He did not have immediate family left in Hendry. His immediate family left in Hendry were in the ground. And so he didn't qualify. Or his family, his little cousin, was trying to buy it for him and saying, let me have the resident rate for this person. And they don't qualify. He's not a resident. He doesn't have immediate family who are here to buy it. Doesn't qualify to pay the non-resident rate. And they said, well, his mom's here. Let him be buried with mom. And so,
$2,500.
and so one of our changes is to allow that. So when mom or dad or your kid are already here, and that's all that's left for you, and they're here but they're dead, we're going to let you come from out of county and be buried next to mom or dad. So that's one of the changes. We're letting you come from out of county.
We're not going to fix that.
We are fixing that.
We're going to keep it so that they have to pay out of county.
We're fixing that.
Why?
Here.
I don't know. That's part of the problem. Am I being heartless here? And if I am, so be it. It'll be the 7th time today I've been called heartless. But no, that's what the problem is Hendry County is a good deal. And that's why we have a swarm of humanity that we don't necessarily want here moving here. So let's fix it and make them have to pay $2,100.
Well, they did. They did pay $2,500 for that because they didn't qualify. But it brought up about once a month, I get a call from Kim or her staff saying, we have the cousin of a stepbrother, and it's all these scenarios.
But why can't we just look at I don't understand why we can't look at their ID and where the cousin from the stepbrother from the uncle, and where's their driver's license say that they reside? If it says they reside in Clewiston or LaVale or Montura or something like that?
Well, we know where they live, but
that doesn't make them a resident?
I'm sorry?
That doesn't make them a resident where they live?
Sure. Yeah, but as far as what the non-resident family is the rub. It's never an issue about who the resident is. They prove their residency. That's easy. It's for the non-resident family member. How close do they have to be as a non-resident family member to get the resident rate?
Let me interrupt. All of his family was buried there. His mother, his father, his other brother. He was the only one that was not buried there. And he's a non-resident, but he was a resident, but his family there. So the key is for him to be able to pay resident because of his family.
Right, he wasn't allowed under current code. We were making that change, proposing to make that change to allow that here.
Just for siblings, right?
No, actually siblings are not.
It was everybody listed.
Yeah. Well, under the proposal, the only non-resident family who get the resident rate are mom, dad, child, spouse.
Okay.
Not siblings.
But he's a child.
He's a child.
Mom and dad's in the cemetery, and it's always been, if mom and dad's there, immediate family with mom, dad, children. I know it went way further than that, and we're trying to slim that down. But his mom's there, his dad's there. That's immediate family.
Well, under our change, it would allow it, but I'm just saying that dead people aren't immediate family anymore. They're dead, and so that's why it wasn't allowed.
But they have been doing it, and it just came up. When somebody reread the ordinance to tweet it. So that's why the purpose of the tweet, so that they can be buried there with their family, with the resident rate.
Right.
Well, I understand, and Madam Chair, the whole thing was we had people coming in, and that's what they would do. They would have someone that was a resident purchase the lot, and then, Commissioner, to your point, once they were in the cemetery, my immediate family's in the cemetery now. We're all coming in from Belgrade, Pahokee, whatever. We're all coming from Palm Beach, and we're going to because of immediate family. So I understand the situation there, but the Hendry County residents, the gentleman, his mom's there, his dad's there, that's immediate family. For me, I mean, he qualifies as being buried with his immediate family. If that's what the tweak is, I'm all for it. If it's the tweaks to take that away, then
no, that's to add that.
And there's one more that since we're in the middle of this conversation, I don't think veterans, period, should pay a penny.
They don't.
They don't.
Yes, they do. Burial rates,
Out of county.
non-resident veterans is gonna be $2,500. They are a veteran.
Non-resident.
That's non-resident.
I don't care. They, where they went and what they went up with, we can give them a 5 by 10 piece of dirt. I've just gotta follow that.
It's a board decision.
Put it in the form of the motion.
Well, we got a lot more to talk about.
We gotta finish the other side first.
Let's go.
Okay, so we only got through point number 1.
Don't be here a while.
So,
Get comfortable, take your shoes off. Get comfortable.
So point number 2 is to specify that residents may purchase or reserve up to a total of 6 lots at a time, just to establish a cap of 6. And that they have to specify at the time of purchase who's going in the plots. And the idea being, because they're buying at the resident rate, but if they come in and buy 6 and I'm a resident, I buy for 5 non-resident family members or even friends or, whoever, then we're allowing a backdoor around the resident rate. So we're requiring the resident to specify who's going in the lot. That's a new requirement. The third item is at the time of burial, then only the person who's designated for the plot can be put there. And if the family want to put somebody else there, it has to be a resident or a child or a parent or a spouse of a resident. And if the person isn't one of those 3, then they can go there, but they got to pay the upcharge because they bought it at the resident rate. 4 is non-residents may purchase or reserve a total of 6 lots at a time. They pay the non-resident rate. And even if they're supposedly buying for a resident, well, then the resident needs to come in and make the purchase. We're trying to eliminate the person who's a resident is the one who needs to come in and buy, not the out-of-county person for the resident. So this specifies, and if they're a non-resident, they're paying the non-resident rate, regardless of how many they're buying, and it's up to 6. And then we got multiple burial lots for a mausoleum. This is to specify that. So for mausoleums, trying to control who goes in there, whether they're residents or non-residents, that would be challenging.
And they go vertical too. We're talking about a lot of people. And so the idea is that to just charge there already is a differential rate between residents and non-residents for the mausoleum plots that are like earmarked as mausoleum plots. And there's still some of those left in Richland, am I right? But there's none of those left in Port to Know.
There's a few left.
So there's a few left. But there's now, because of the limited numbers in Port to Know, some people are wanting to buy burial lots, piece them together, not in the mausoleum section, but in the just general section, and put a mausoleum up. And so if they're allowed to buy at the non-resident rate, they buy 4 or 6 lots of them, at the resident rate, and then they fill it up with non-residents. And so that's part of police. And so the idea was to come up with a new rate. That's the mausoleum multiple lot rate. And that we propose to be $1,200.
For resident, we'll start at 3.
Well, for a mausoleum plot, which are big, there are basically 4 burial lots, I think.
Yeah.
That's already established, 3,300 for a resident.
7,000 for non-resident. We're not changing that. What we're talking about is when you cobble together multiple burial lots, what do you pay? And so for those, we're proposing $1,250 per lot if you're doing the mausoleum columbarium deal. And then there's 2 other issues that are not ownership issues. I'll touch on those if you want me to, or if you want to talk any more about these ownership, who can buy, who can go. Point 6 and 7 is what I was going to move on to. If you want to move on to those. Okay, sounds like I should. So the 6th item is we have issues when somebody's already in a grave, who gets to decide what kind of marker gets put on there. And so this would make it clear that if the owner of a plot is still alive, so oftentimes people buy for somebody else. So if the owner of the plot is still alive, he or she gets to decide after burial, okay, I want to put a marker up, and this is what I want to do. And they're the decision maker that we defer to. But sometimes a plot is owned by the person who goes in it, you know, and so then there's, who gets to decide then, you know? And so we're specifying that it's the heir at law, you know, under the state, you know, basically when someone dies, you know, who's their heir at law, and they get to decide. And then the last thing is, there's been an issue with permanent flagpoles being installed. I'm not talking about the little veterans American flags, but like a flagpole that's permanent. And then solar lights are becoming more common, and then they kind of deteriorate and look bad. So the ones that are there would be allowed to stay, but there'd be like no new ones for those two objects. That would be one of the other changes.
So before we close out that number 7, I want to talk about something. So I spent a lot of time in Ridgelawn Cemetery with many issues, and I tell you, the solar light issue on the east side of the cemetery looks like an airplane can land there. It looks like a runway strip. So in addition to that, I do believe we need to address it. I'm not so sure that we need to just let them go. That's the pleasure of the board, but I have a big problem with what's within the coping of a cemetery plot. You'll pass that down. The language, I'm sorry, I got stuff all over the place. The way I read it, Mark, on the coping, states, except for the perimeter coping of marble or granite.
Where are you reading?
I'm sorry, page 506 of the existing ordinance, section 1-8-5. And it's under paragraph E. Except for the perimeter coping of marble, granite, or poured concrete, no more than 6 inches high, no enclosure of any kind, such as fence, coping, hedge, or ditch shall be permitted around any burial lot. Any coping installed in accordance with this provision must be maintained in a way which is not adverse to the beauty and repose of a cemetery. Now, the way I read that is, it's for the coping itself. It's not what's within the coping. So I've reached out to staff since I've been elected about every complaint that I've gotten at Ridgelawn, and it normally is about what's growing 2 feet high within the coping. And it's always been told by me until I read this ordinance that our staff cannot touch what's within the coping of a cemetery plot. Now, for the public that you guys can't see this is a cemetery plot that has roughly, now it's been sprayed with Roundup or 2,4-D, but at times that our staff goes out there and mows the cemetery plots, they cannot touch what's within that coping, and it's unsightly. So if what happens is someone spends a lot of money creating a nice plot for their family, but then they don't go back and visit and address what's in there, and our staff was under the impression they cannot maintain it. I'd like to see something within our ordinance. And Mitchell, I don't know how you feel. I know you used to work for the county and whatnot. How do you feel about addressing that within what's in the code?
The situation with that is it goes back to when 1988, 89, when I originally started working in cemeteries with Poochie Pasher and Arthur Brown. That's the reason I asked today. I was trying to find the regulations because up until 1998 there was a set of rules. In 1998 there was a change in rules. In 2004 there was another change in rules. In 2021 there was another change in rules. So I was told the same thing in that era. I was told the same thing. Once the coping, it was private property. And we discussed that usually what you got was a deed. And we're trying to move away from that. We had problems with things being stolen in the cemetery, and we're told in court that that is abandoned goods. It's on private property, but it's abandoned goods. So we've always been told once a coping is sealed, do not go in the coping. That, again, that goes back to 88, 89. So I was looking today to try to find that. According to this, you're right. It says you can remove the coping. It doesn't say anything about cleaning up the inside of the coping.
Well, I think
it speaks specifically to the coping. If you read it.
Well, no, his section,
It has to be
there's other sections.
The
There's
coping
other
needs to be
sections.
maintained, not what's inside of it.
That's what this is saying.
But there's other sections. So F and G would also be relevant to this. That same section he was reading from, F and G.
Yeah, but that's plants and shrubs. The problem here is weeds.
Well,
Once a year, what they would do is the high school key club comes out once a year in LaBelle, and they did it in Lewiston as well. They would come out, they would clean the stones, they would clean the areas inside the coping, and that's the only ones that clean that for the past 25 years that I know of.
Okay, well, okay, so there's a few sections that could allow cleaning up within the coping. One would be A, 185A, the county through its county commission, agents, and employees shall have exclusive control over cemeteries and all monuments, mausoleums, memorials, improvements, burial lots, plantings, trees, shrubs, sodding, and other things and objects within the cemetery. So we're allowed to be in there, you know, with it. It's not like it's, you know, we regulate private property around the county. I mean, you know, the people on their house, and we regulate.
These were written in, Mr. Lapp, these were written in 2021?
No, I couldn't tell you when that, like, it's
Well, that's
existing
the reason-
language. I don't know when that showed up.
That was why the question was raised originally, why we were told that. If it was in the ordinance, if it's been changed, that's fine. So I'm talking, again, the rules and regulations changed in 1998. You had to have concrete, granite, or marble. No benches. The benches had to be concrete, granite, or marble. Before that, there were no benches. So there's a lot of things, there's a lot of open ends here. They're very unsightly. We've had trees that have been planted, and they tear up the headstone next to them. We have issues with that as well. I worked in cemeteries for over 20 years. All of these situations, you know, the question's asked, have they been told they can't have that? Absolutely. I've handed them rules and regulations. These are the trees that are allowed. These are the trees that are not. These are the flowers that are allowed. These are the flowers that are not. Guess what? A week later, those are the trees that's there. Those are the coping that's there. So
let me ask you about that, because I had a conversation about that today.
Sure.
When you gave them those rules, is that when they came to buy the cemetery plot?
Most of them asked for that. At the time of purchase, they would ask for us. When we talked about it, I always discuss with them the rules and regulations. They'd look, hey, see that coping over there? I want to put that around here. No, sir, no, ma'am, that's not allowed. This is the rules. Do you have a copy of those? Yes, I do. And I would pass those out at the time I was with the family, yes.
So what I like to see happen, because at the end of the day, when someone goes by a cemetery plot, they're grieving because a family member's been lost. And yes, they get a lot of paperwork, and it's going to go in a drawer, and they're kind of forget it. I think we need to follow up 30, 45 days after the fact and say, hey, at the time of purchase, we went over some rules. Here are the rules again, so that you know. Because I can tell you, at Ridgeline Cemetery, there's so many code violations based on what our existing ordinance is right now, that to me, it's because our staff hasn't done what they're supposed to do. So now we're going to go to these people and say, we need to get this cemetery and all the cemeteries back in the shape that they need to be, and we need to have these rules in place moving forward.
I'm agree with what you said at first, that when they bury the loved one, they really don't hear. Because I didn't hear none of that when I buried my mother. So it's not that they don't tell you, you're really not focused on what should or what should not be there. So the follow-up might be a good thing, you know, maybe a couple of weeks later, just, you know, FYI for them to know.
But Mitch, you have staffing problem?
Yes, sir. When you start cleaning up cemeteries, you might as well decide that you're going to dedicate at least 3 to 4 people to this. And here's this other side of that. There's a sign that we place on these lots. There's a sign that says you have 30 days to come into compliance. There's a phone number on that you call. Those signs always get thrown in the dumpster without fail. We take pictures. This is back when I was working in the cemeteries. We take pictures, just time stamp when the sign was there. With the sign there, after we went through this about 3 times, it takes about 3 months. Finally, we get a phone call. Somebody would cut your face shut. And by the time you got to the cemetery, they realized that they were wrong. But it's an ongoing, it's every cemetery, Commissioner. If you go out to court, you know you're going to see the same thing. We have some out there that we've told the kids, don't put stuff on this lot. Every year they come back to that. The birthday, they come back. It's going to be an ongoing problem. It's not going to be a one and done, just so everyone knows that. It's not going to be, there's the rules. That's just not the way it's going to be.
Ms. Kim?
When we do send out the deed, we do send a copy of the ordinance, and I highlight Hendry County Cemetery ordinances on there. So they do get a copy later on with their deed.
And Madam Chair, when you speak to the chairs, Mark, that's something we've done for, again, over 20 years. We'd meet them out there, we'd show them where they could put a tree. There is certain trees there was a list of trees that was allowed. I don't see it on here. But there was trees that were allowed, there were trees that weren't allowed, there was plants that was allowed, plants that weren't. I don't see it on these at all. That's the only reason I'm asking, where did it change? If it was changed, okay, but if it wasn't, That's the reason I'm asking these questions, because this is not the set of rules that I passed out from 88 till 16 when I was elected.
I don't even know what rules are handed out. I don't know. All I know is the ordinance.
Right, well, there was ordinance, there were rules under the ordinances, the ordinance was stamped on there. So, again, the trees are problems, you got a couple lots out there, Commissioner, if you went behind the restroom to the east,
Oh, maybe, yeah, all the trees.
you've seen a lot. Yeah, baby land is another, it's very touchy, it's another situation, there's a lot of decorations. Every holiday, there's decorations, every holiday. Every birthday, there's decorations.
Before we move forward, this is a public hearing. Anyone from the public wishes to speak? And moving forward, do we need to do every individual mark, 1 through 6 or 7?
Well, no, but so the recommendation is fourfold: to adopt the ordinance, adopt the fees resolution with the addition of the $12.50 per lot for the burial lots that are combined to form a mausoleum plot. To adopt that, direct the clerk to only issue certificates of interment for all burial lots going forward, and then lastly, it was to provide direction about the refund for the one scenario that prompted this whole thing. That's the recommendation.
Just that one person, right?
It's just that one person. Yep.
What about the veterans?
Yeah, before we vote on this, I want to visit veterans.
It's up to you. It's up to you. Right now, it's free for resident veterans. It's out-of-county rate for non-resident
So we
veterans.
need to do it separate.
Well, no, if you want to make that change, just tell me, and that'll be part of what you approve.
I don't have a problem for the veterans being free. My thing of it is, if we open that can of worms, everybody from around the county might come in and we might, or we set so many aside. I'm not, not quite sure which would be feasible, but I do understand that they should be free for county residents, or if they lived in the county and moved away. But I feel like if you open that door, then everybody's gonna come.
They need to say it.
But that's just,
I think you need to specify what, for the non-resident veterans, is it everybody, even if they literally have no connection at all to Hendry, they don't have any family here, but they get they're in for free? I just want to be clear.
Why would they come here if they have no connection?
Yeah.
Well, okay, well, they may, because it's free.
But I'm
Most
sure that
of your
other
cemeteries, their national cemeteries, are free for veterans.
Right.
I just left one last Thursday. The situation, again, the veterans, and here's the deal. I can probably count on both hands how many veteran lots I sold in the time I was there. I gave away. And at one point, they wouldn't let the spouse be buried with them, and we changed that. So
It's it's your preference. I just wanted to be clear on what you want.
Make that part of the motion with your language for.
So we want to make a motion to approve
The ordinance,
the ordinance as written with the change of the veterans lots.
The ordinance as written, the resolution with the change that all veterans, regardless of residency or connection to the county, are a free lot, if that's what you're saying.
That's it.
And then the certificates of interment going forward.
The only thing I have a question on is we're saying that flagpoles and solar lights would be prohibited. And for some reason, we're doubling down on that one, but yet we know there's a ton of what I'm going to use as code violations throughout the cemetery. Commissioner Iglesias, it's ironic that you referenced some pictures and stuff. And, I'll just tell you, I guarantee it's one of the top 3 things that people say very negatively about me is because when you start talking to me about a cemetery, I say, yeah, they absolutely suck, and our cemetery looks horrible. And, I don't know what to tell you because it's somebody's personal property whenever they put coping around it. I don't know how we go about it. You're telling me we have language in here that says we should be able to address that, or is that still up for debate? Because I haven't heard a clear answer on that. And is your recommendation, if it's not in there, so let's just say you have 4 plots, there's a marble, very expensive, coping around it, but those humans haven't been here for years, and it's waist high. You're saying you would like the ability for county staff to go in there and clean that?
Not necessarily clean it, weed eat it or spray it. But if you have a cemetery plot beside it that you take care of, and your neighbors inside, it's no different than the issues that we have when people having in their neighborhood grass growing up to the waist, and we put a code violation. No different.
No different. We struggle with addressing those as well. So my question is, I go back to, what is it that you want to see done? and what is the will of the board as it relates to that subject. Because the only person I know that has the most personal knowledge of this subject is Commissioner Wills. Obviously, you know, it's a touchy situation whenever you start dealing with a loved one's grave. So, you know, I don't know how.
But if they're not maintaining it, I mean,
I
you saw the
understand,
picture I sent.
and it is the definition of an eyesore. But some people's eyesores get overlooked in certain areas.
This one right here, you can't even see the coping.
Understood?
You can't even see the headstone nor the coping because it's covered in weeds. If they take offense, if the family takes offense to that, I don't know what else we can do without taking a picture of it and saying we need to go in there and maintain it.
Well, that picture right there, Commissioner, Madam Chair, that picture right there shows that they haven't weeded the exterior of the coping, which we are supposed to do.
Yeah.
So that's on us.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
inside of that's on them, and that's on us. You just, you throwed us on the bus.
So we're gonna motion,
So I just want to be clear what you're doing though. So on this issue of the tall grass within a plot, section F, under 185, which is in your packet there to look at. We didn't propose any change to that, but you can change it now if you'd like. It's mainly about, well, it names trees, shrubs, vines, or plants. And, you know, I understand grass I don't know, that's technically a plant, but to be clear, we might want to go ahead and add that, you know.
Weeds.
Weeds and grass. And to be clear that too, if it's growing, and it becomes, now the way it's worded, it has to be detrimental to adjacent burial lots, walkways, roads, or avenues, or is dead or damaged. Well,
Can you say unsightly?
Unsightly.
Well, I just think I think that's the catch-all right there, Commissioner Iglesias, is that, to me, you use logic. Whose logic, you know, one versus another, I don't know, but the cemetery looks bad, and it looks bad a lot. And the excuse and or reason, whichever one you want to give, that's been given to me the entire time is when they buy that piece of dirt and they put, you know, and we say it's got to be poured concrete. No, when they put cinder blocks up or they put the white trellis stuff, what is that called?
Landscape stones?
Yeah, they put those up, that's it.
Landscape benches.
It dials in and then it becomes no man's land and we never touch it. But by law, the county staff should be able to snatch that white stuff up right there in that picture and be able to make that a blank slate. Now, are we going to get the county staff guy shot or girl shot? I don't know. I know if you would have touched my mama's or my brother's grave whenever they first passed, probably would have been hands. However, I'm willing to let you go out there and clean the whole thing now. So, you know, what do you want to do? What do we want to do, board? Let's give direction.
Well, here, one more quick thing. That scalloping and plastic trellis,
Yes.
since 1998,
It's
has
been
been
barred.
illegal.
But it's all
But
over
it's
the
still there,
cemetery.
right? That's my point.
Yeah,
But there was a set of rules. that
I find it
changed.
ironic that we're talking about rules that we have in the county that
Can't
aren't
even see
being
them.
enforced. I don't know. I've heard this before somewhere else, but
and I
maybe
just
I'm.
believe because it's a touchy situation, so that's why, no one have went out and pulled it up. You like you said, when you get shot today or tomorrow?
But that's the thing, though. I mean, Ms. Berno, it's given at the time of purchase, correct?
Well, we send it with a deed.
Yes, ma'am.
We mail it to them
They only get the deed when they finish the quota, correct?
when they pay for it.
Yes, ma'am. And so they have that. So a contract has been created between us and the client. The contract says we have the right to go out there and clean it. I will tell you, this is one of the number one things that I have witnessed in my time as an elected official that gets people the most upset that the county's not performing on. And I say, I'm sorry, I have a horrible excuse every time, Commissioner Iglesias. I feel like I'm telling them, sorry, there's nothing we can do about it. But you know, if you want to, if we need to give the ability for a weed eater to run over the top of that, I'm all about it. Is that offensive to somebody? So be it. You know, I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just saying you can't allow your place to look horrible because it affects your neighbor, right?
Right.
Well, I've been saying that with homes as well, but it all leads together. So if you want to get on board with this one, I'll jump on board with you.
Okay. I would suggest instead of unsightly, which is a matter of opinion, you establish like a number of inches high, you know, like for weeds and grass, if it exceeds X inches, then it's subjective, it's
And
over.
somewhere in here it says 8 inches, Mr. Mr. Lapp?
That's the coping, and then
The
the
coping was
speaks to
6
the
inches.
mound of dirt
Yeah.
that's left, yeah.
Yeah.
Where's it?
I can't remember, boss, it's somewhere, but I remember reading it. Yeah, and I think it's in the one where we talk about what you can have from a standpoint of coping, where it has to be poured concrete or slab or something, but.
Well, okay. Well, I'm talking about the height of.
No, that's what I'm saying, but it basically, it gives a height to me.
That's 6. It's for coping, it's 6 inches.
I think you just lock it in at that, Mark, because past 6 to 8 inches in a cemetery, it starts to stick out like a sore thumb.
So, if I can recap what I think I'm hearing for F, which talks about the trees, shrubs, vines, or plants, we would add to that, grass or weeds in excess of 6 inches are subject to being cleaned up by staff, and I guess, well, that period, that's the requirement, but then as far as practice, I think what staff do is they like post it, right, or we're not gonna do that anymore?
They do post it. They post it and give family 30 days according to the sign. There's an ordinance number on the sign, so according to that, it's a 30-day ordinance.
And it says the county reserves the right to remove all flowers, potted plants, summer leaves, basket of flowers, artificial flowers, solar lights, or other decorations. And in the language that we put in, Mark, we just said we're gonna zero in on solar lights and flagpoles. I think you leave all of that in there and you reinforce it, you double down on it.
But I think we need to give people time, since we haven't enforced it in such a long time.
I'm all about
that
it.
we give them some time, and we need to come up with.
April, May, June. So let's say after the 4th of July, after we do, it's,
But it's just going forward.
Yeah, this is.
For the flagpoles and the solar lights, it's just going forward.
if you allow it to go just, if you allow it to be just going forward, I hate to say this, but
It's not gonna change, because people are gonna see that and assume they can do it.
that's 100% correct, number one. Number two is, they're gonna say, well, I just put this, it's always been here. Well, now who is it? Did you go out and timestamp it with the photographer?
Well, they would need to, in order, the plan was for staff to do a picture documentary of where things stand when this got adopted.
And just to be, whatever the board's will is, but we were just trying to be sensitive of, we understand that it's a very sensitive, subject, and then the people that already have it there, we weren't trying to pull everything up or make them remove, just going forward.
Does it grandfather in?
That's the proposal, is the grandfather existing.
My last 2 cents on this is going to be to my colleague sitting beside me. When you get a call and staff has done their job, support staff.
I will. Because every complaint I've ever gotten from the north side of Coulson, which is that main part of my district, the only complaint I get from them is this cemetery.
It's been a complaint for years, between the weeds and the grass turning brown in the wintertime and not wanting to pay the water bill and the pump's still not there. But again, I echo that. Support staff.
I know
There's going to be calls to the commissioners, and they're going to be upset. So, you know what? I was sitting there on the board. We made that decision together. This is what we told staff to do. We need to support the staff.
One of the things, yes,
Yeah.
one of the things, we had I can't remember if staff bumped it or if the people bumped it, but we had a, what is it called, y'all? What is it, the thing that they put on your headstone? The headstone got cocked to the side, and it was the hands off, we can't touch it, So, and that could get very expensive, and that could get very time consuming from a labor perspective. You start talking about a headstone, I don't know how much a marble headstone must weigh, but, and so, where I'm in it on this is, I don't think you grandfather in, I think you bring it into, you have the concept of an HOA Nazi mindset, and you try to bring it all into line moving forward, and I think you're going to have a tremendous amount of gnashing of teeth, but I think people are going to ultimately understand what we're trying to do here and bring order to chaos.
Yeah,
Because it's a chaotic looking situation out there right now.
And I agree with you. I don't think we need a grandfather in, but I think we need to give them more time than July 4th. I'd like to see 6 months or a year, but at least 6 months.
Okay.
So the idea would be that the 6 months is for the flagpoles and the solar lights to remove them? Is that what I'm hearing?
We would post that.
Well, he's talking about the cleaning and everything. Commissioner, the only problem with giving them 6 months is you're going to have 6 months more compounded on top of that. Keep that in mind.
They always gave
And
them.
about the flagpoles, and that's.
My thing is item G being applied. everything being applied that's in item G, which is the county reserves the right to remove all flowers, potted plants, summer wreaths, basket of flowers, artificial flowers, solar lights, other decorations with them become withered, deteriorated, obstruct or hinder the maintenance of the cemetery, interfere with their operation, becomes unsightly. They put the word unsightly in there. I agree. In the judgment of the county. People say, oh, you know what? What's unsightly to me isn't unsightly to you. Okay, that's fine. Well, I go back to how many times I just want to eat at Sonny's and I get yelled at for 20 minutes because right next to my grandma's grave, it looks like garbage, and how can you allow it to look like that? And I say, I promise I didn't, I guess I could go out there with meat eater and get after it, but I don't want to.
On the flagpoles, do y'all have any idea about that, about considering leaving the ones that are there or allowing more? No?
I think you should leave the ones.
I think you should leave the ones there, grandfather them in, but moving forward, then you make the change.
So how many you think you got out there?
Just 3. I know, well,
Ridgeline? Yeah.
Ridgeline's 3.
How many's in
Probably 4 to 5. The only thing I would say there is if you're going to take them out, when the flag becomes unsightly, then it comes out.
How do they maintain it?
But I'm telling you, I've been to Ridgeline, the flags are ripped and shredded.
Yep.
Well, Mr. Morgan, that every Veterans Day, I go out there with Christine Peterson and her group. We get on the ladder and we change that one specifically every year for that family as a request from Ms. Peterson.
Well, you may have to do the
That's
other
the
three.
only one, but when I went out there this morning, there is one that is shredded, that it's the same way it's been for the last 8 months, and I really want to go out there and rip it down myself, to be honest with you.
Well, again, that's what you're going to run into, and it's going to be an ongoing battle again. It's not going to be a one and done.
So if nobody's keeping them up, then, take
They don't
them
have
out.
the right to-
They might not have family.
If you're not going to keep up with an American flag, you don't have the right to fly it.
Well, they might not have family, there might not be anyone else living.
And they're
to
not all
take care
American
of it.
flags, so I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's all right.
They're not all American flags.
So the way that it was proposed was for the flags that are there can stay until they become unsightly, or until such time as they become unsightly, at which time they can be taken down. But if they stay in good shape, the ones that are there can stay in perpetuity. That's the proposal. Same thing with solar lights. The ones that are there can stay. If they become unsightly, they get removed. But if they keep them up, replace them, then they can keep that going. And then nobody new can put any new flagpoles or solar lights. That's the proposal that we wrote up. So are you wanting to change that at all?
So once again, it's a public hearing. Anyone from the public wish to speak so we can move forward? Okay. I need a
So,
motion.
okay, well,
We got a motion on the floor already, in a second.
we did, okay.
Motion by who?
Yeah, well,
I made a motion.
but
When it was in the middle of this, and you changed the verbiage of it, I changed the verbiage of the motion. We put in the portion of the veterans. Again, thank you. The only thing we did not, and it's still in the motion, is what we're talking about right now as far as flags and
Solar lights, are we gonna wait?
I would say,
Let them
I
ride?
would say, my motion would include that as written.
can I just ask, just so we're really clear, because we've gone around and around a lot, can I ask that you withdraw the motion, I restate something new so that we're very clear on time? I think we're gonna have to go back and look through the video, and did we get it right? I don't know,
I'll withdraw the motion.
Okay.
Okay, now,
Okay, so
what
what
I make
I'm
a motion, so go ahead and how you want to word it.
Okay. So let's take the ordinance, the resolution, and the other issues separate, one at a time. So the ordinance only, the proposal is exactly as written in the packet with these changes, to specify that grass or weeds over 6 inches in height can be trimmed, maintained by staff. That's a change. And then,
You want to do that motion by itself?
well, no, that's a change to the written ordinance. Otherwise, you're doing exactly what the ordinance says.
Right.
And I don't think, the other thing about fees, that's in the resolution, we'll take that up in a minute. And then for the,
Mark,
That's in the
you
resolution.
need to say specifically though, irregardless of where it's placed. I don't want staff to come back and say, well, they had cinder blocks up and I can't go inside the cinder blocks.
Right.
Is that catch-all being put in there?
well, we already have, where I'm gonna put this new language about the 6-inch height, weeds and grass, that's an F. And so F is upon any burial lot.
Okay.
I mean, it's upon any burial lot. I mean, it's very encompassing about, where it is. And so I'm gonna add that language in about grass and weeds there. And so on the flagpoles and the solar lights, I think I heard that you're going with the proposal, which is no new ones, allow existing ones. If the existing ones become unsightly, then staff can take them out. That's what I think I've heard.
Yes.
Okay, so that's,
You're gonna leave the solar lights in there in perpetuity that are there.
No,
If they're
I'm saying the
maintained.
flags are
If they're maintained.
perpetuity, but not the solar lights.
Why do you need lights in cemeteries?
Our ordinance says you're not supposed to be there
So,
at the park.
so say that, Commissioner Iglesias, unless you want me to.
No, I'll say it. So the
Okay.
flags I want in perpetuity as long as the flags are maintained, but as far as the solar lights, I don't want the solar lights. I want them taken out.
Okay.
So once again, I still think that we need to notify the owners. I don't think we need to tag the properties. I would like to see us send a letter out, and I don't know if that's Kim's department or what, but to give them at least 6 months from today's date in order to do that, or our staff can help you, however that may be.
With the solar light.
Yep. And anything else that doesn't fit the ordinance. So that they're prepared should we go in there and address as we have the manpower to do so.
the only thing that's changing as far as maintenance of the lots is the grass and weeds. Going forward, everybody needs to keep it under 6 inches or we're gonna do it for them.
Right.
And then the solar lights.
And our staff needs to keep the cemetery below 6 inches as well.
And then for the solar lights, they got 6 months to remove them themselves, or else they're gonna be pulled out after 6 months by staff.
Correct, but that being said, Board, now we already know that within this ordinance, there are many violations throughout that cemetery, or all of our cemeteries.
Yes.
Whether it's landscape, we're going down another rabbit hole, but it's really, every ordinance, every item within the ordinance needs to be adhered to. Otherwise, staff has the opportunity to go in there and make those changes when they become unsightly. What do you think, Commissioners?
No, that's exactly right. And I think Mark said to the point, G, A, I, you look at all those. That's why I brought up the issue of, I don't understand why we're just focusing in and putting new language that talks about flagpoles and solar lights when we should be talking about the whole issue as an entirety. So I think what you're saying is give them a 6-month time frame to be able to come into compliance, and then after 6 months is all bets are off. We're going to clean up and we're going to deal with all of the stuff that's in the different items of this to try to bring our cemeteries into compliance. With the exception of touching flagpoles.
Some people have solar lights, but they're sitting in a flower pot that's made onto the.
Flower pot shouldn't be there.
It's made onto the headstone. So they're not flower pots sitting in the ground. They're made onto the headstone with solar lights.
That's going to be interesting.
It is gonna be interesting, because if I got a flower pot and it's made onto the headstone, I don't want you to take a solar light out.
Yes, ma'am.
So if I feel like that, then the next person's gonna feel like that. No, you're not.
No, we're not.
Here's the whole thing, Commissioners, and this is gonna sound terrible. Everything we've talked about.
Yep.
The only thing that we did not have and do was inside the coping. Everything else has been in the ordinance forever.
That's exactly right.
The only thing new for the last hour, the only thing new
It's inside the
is
code.
inside the coping.
Well, even that.
And if we establish that, then we're fine.
With the coping, inside the coping, being
That's
able
my
to
point though. That's the only thing we're arguing over. That's it.
being able to regulate inside the coping is not new language. That's not, did we even propose, I didn't put anything forward to you to change that.
I understand
That's
that, Mark.
already here.
Mark, what we're stating is that it hasn't been dealt with. ever.
Okay, but that's not
been
an
the
ordinance
reason.
change, that's a direction to staff to
Yes.
enforce what the ordinance says.
Yep.
So you have the ordinance from 1988.
Yeah, I didn't go back and do a historical.
There you go. So we
But I
did make
know-
a change.
I do know they always, when they get ready to clean, they tell them they could not go inside.
100%.
The workers would not touch it, so, maybe we just need to redirect them, because they don't have the understanding.
Give them the authority to go in and do it. Then again, back them when they do.
Okay, so if I can recap the ordinance, so we can get into a motion here. So adopt the ordinance as written, establish a restriction or a requirement that grass and weeds not exceed 6 inches in height on the burial lot, and if it exceeds, then staff can go in and take necessary maintenance action. And then for the solar lights, those have 6 months to be removed. After that, removed by the owner. And if not removed, then staff can remove. And then otherwise, the ordinance is as written. That's what I think I heard.
Did you send out the flags? If they didn't care?
We're doing the resolution and the fees separate.
Martin, do you want a clarification on the flags? Did you mention the flags?
As written, flags that are there can stay
As maintained.
as long as they're maintained. If they become unsightly, then they can be removed by staff. And then there's no new flag poles, permanent flag poles. We're not talking about the veterans.
The pole would stay there?
I'm sorry?
The pole would stay there with no flag?
Existing, well, a pole without a flag?
Yeah. Would we take the pole up?
I don't know. Does that happen?
There's no need for
No,
a
we're
poll.
saying we got 3 to 5 of them, we're gonna let them stay. Theirs will be there in perpetuity. They can't put another one in. Nobody that buys a new plot can put one in.
I'll make
That's
a
what you
motion.
said.
I'll make a motion to approve, as presented by Mark.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Iglesias, second by Commissioner Turner. All in favor?
Aye.
I oppose because I do not want the solar lights removed if they're on someone's headstone, so I vote against it.
So now what's the second part of the motion, Martin?
Okay, so the resolution, the fees resolution. So this is presented for approval with the, as presented in your packets with 2 changes, I think. One is I made, filled in the blank for the multiple burial lots that are cobbled together for a mausoleum. The price is $1,250 per lot, regardless of residency. And then the other thing I heard was for the veterans, regardless of residency or connection to the county, is a free plot.
Yes. So
moved.
second.
Motion by Commissioner Turner, second by Commissioner Wills. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed.
Okay, the third item is for you to approve on a going forward basis for the clerk to only issue certificates of interment for all burial lots.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Harris, second by Commissioner Wills. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
And the last item is whether you want to do a partial refund for the family situation that prompted this situation.
I'll make a motion that we do not do a refund.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Turner, second by Commissioner Harris. All in favor?
Aye.
I disagree. I oppose the motion because
I
that
do
was
as well.
Three.
Opposed.
That motion passed, 3-2.
All right.
Motion passed.
That's all.
Thank you, Jesus.
Okay, I know. At this time, we in RZ 21-000, rezoning.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
is this the residential high density mobile home, RG3
It's
Z21?
It's our, yes.
Okay.
Right. Oh, I forgot you don't.
No, no, I got it. I wanted to make sure. That's all, I'm sorry.
So good evening, for the record, Katie Wellner, Associate County Planner. So this agenda item is a rezone for a 4.2 acre property along State Road 29. So the 2 parcels are just south of G Road on State Road 29. They currently have a future land use of multi-use, and they are currently zoned a mixture of RG3M and C2. The property owner is requesting to rezone to PUD to allow for the construction of an event center.
Madam Chair, just so the board is aware, we had a public meeting with this, and I don't know if anyone came tonight. The applicant was very open, and I believe they covered just about all the bases of the complaints and concerns. This is definitely in my district. So just so you know that, I mean, I would be making a motion that we approve.
You're making a motion that we approve? I second that motion.
And this is a public hearing. Anyone from the public wishes to speak at this time? Can you give your card to her for me, please? That's all right. Thank you.
Yes, my main concern would be the public safety issue.
Can you give me your name, please?
Yes, ma'am, Jose Quintero.
Thank you.
Concerning, do we have enough paramedics and firemen to combat something that would happen in that event as of now? You know, because, I mean, something might happen and we won't have enough firemen, enough paramedics. I don't know where we stand with that, but it can be a big public safety issue.
Yes, sir, I'm sorry, I didn't hear your name, I apologize.
Oh, Jose Quintero, yes.
Yes, sir, the meeting, the public meeting that night, it was discussed, that's a very good point. It was discussed that the sheriff's department will be on site, if I'm correct in that, they have representatives that can answer those questions. They would be on site and traffic would be handled with them as well. So that was one of the concerns, yes, sir. They did address that, which they could talk further into it if you'd like.
Okay.
So Mitch, they do have turn lanes?
No, sir, they do not have turning lanes. We can, again, the applicant's here, you can come up and fill in the blanks.
Those were added today.
Today?
Yeah, right?
Okay, we got them.
So after the public outreach meeting, there were a few concerns that dealt with traffic and some buffering and walls and things. So since the LPA, they've added a turn lane for northbound traffic, southbound traffic, and FDOT is only allowing one entrance, so they amended their site plan to only have one entrance. So there has been some revisions since the LPA meeting based off of staff review, the Florida Department of Transportation staff as well, and community feedback.
What about the parking lot?
The parking lot is, it hasn't been changed. A portion of the parking lot is grass. I don't remember how many parking spaces they have, but
It was listed in here, I'm looking right now.
it is on the plans. I just can't read it from here. What was
Lights
it?
on the parking lot?
Yes.
Okay.
And they are consistent with the dark skies, correct?
Yep.
Did you want to address that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Good evening, Madam Chairman and board members. Blair Foley for the record, representing the petitioner. Just to answer a few of the questions, the site plan that you see on the board to my left and to your right, the light colored area on the top, that's all the proposed grass parking. So you get an understanding that it's not going to be a full sea of asphalt. There'll also be a full landscape plan around the perimeter, as well as those individual light islands that are at the end of the parking islands. Those will also be planted with landscape trees. So we tried to break it up the best we could. It's a little unusual. Most parking lots do not include grass, but we felt there was sufficient argument to provide that. And as far as the turn lanes go, the DOT, we've had conversations with them regarding what they would like to see here in the way of improvements. So we are going to design and permit the turn lane facilities in complete accordance with FDOT standards. And it's quite lengthy. It's not just a short turn lane. The lengths of the turn lane exceed the property boundaries themselves. So it's fairly extensive. Another thing that came up at the public meeting last month that was pretty well attended was that we have changed some of the language in the ordinance that stated a fence or a wall around the perimeter. We've taken the word fence out. We're going to do a wall. We feel that it'll be a better buffer for the surrounding properties and may give it some sound attenuation as well. So that's going to be around all three property boundaries, you know, the north, the east, and the south. That was not, the wall was not included on the south buffer initially, but that's been added since the last 30 days. Again, I'm the civil engineer on the project. From an operations standpoint, the owner is here if you want any specific questions. But if you have any engineering questions, I'm here to answer them at this time.
Anyone have anything?
No, ma'am.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing. Anyone else from the public wish to speak? Thank you. Was that all amendments, 1 through 3?
Just for clarification with the motion, we need to change the ordinance so that it says just wall and the conditions instead of wall and or fence.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Wills, second by Commissioner Harris. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. We are now at LDC 22-001, amendment to Mark 2 sections of the Land Development Code. Thank you.
Again, for the record, Katie Wellner, County Planner. So this is an amendment to a few sections of the Land Development Code. We're looking at Article 5 on lighting. So these are sort of the issues that came up that made it so that staff pursued these amendments. So the current code doesn't apply to residential and agriculturally zoned properties, and there was no reference to dark skies requirements. Section 153-6.3 on fences and walls. The revision is due to some confusion from inspectors, staff, and residents on which side of the fence is the good side. Make sure that the good side of the fence is facing towards the neighbors. And then the last section is amended to be compliant with the state statute that passed this last legislative session. And it is updating some site requirements for residential construction and is sort of the first step towards the tree preservation stuff that we had been talking about before. So in the lighting section, we changed the applicability section to include residential and agricultural districts, and it specifies how to handle PUDs. It moved the security lighting down a few subsections, and it says that basically all lighting has to be compliant with the dark skies standards. For section 1-53-6.3 on fences and walls, so subsection D was moved down to subsection E, or sorry, F. I can't read it from here. And then subsection E was amended to talk about the finish side. Since the LPA meeting, staff has been discussing internally and with some feedback from the LPA what would be most appropriate. And there were some concerns over the section that was moved that talks about agricultural fences and residential districts. So that language has been changed to say that in residential properties that have animals may have a field fence, hog wire, and or barbed wire fence if farm animals are kept on the property, so that would still be allowed. We received a lot of feedback regarding barbed wire fencing in rural residential. We wanted to make sure that this was adequately covered. So Article 12 is where most of the changes occurred. So the name of the article is changing basically from only talking about mobile homes to all residential construction. The section has applied to all residential construction for a while, but the name needed to be updated. Section 1-53-118 removes some skirting material requirements for mobile homes. Section 1-58-119 references master plan communities. This is in response to that House bill. The preemption from the state legislature essentially says that we can't regulate design based off of zoning districts. It has to be or we can only do it in master plan communities. So we have named our master plan communities, and that those would be the communities that this would apply to. And then we had some changes to the building pad requirements in section 1-58-121. So section 1-58-122 is completely new. I have fun little diagrams so that you guys know what I'm talking about or what we're talking about, what the intention is for each one of these. So the first one has changed since the LPA meeting. We wanted to specify the size or clarify the size of the property that we're talking about a little bit better. So on parcels that are half an acre or less, basically you have to sod whatever's not covered by structure instead of just creating a sodded area right around the base of the house. We want to make sure that the whole yard has grass or something in it. And then for parcels larger than that, you can have it seeded. The second one talks about trees. This also has changed since the LPA meeting. Originally, we were going to scale the amount of trees with how big the property is, but after some internal discussions, we decided that that might be a little bit too onerous on some property owners. So on parcels that are half an acre or less, they would be required to have one 12-foot in height canopy tree. So a canopy tree is one that is made for shade, and like, you know, an oak tree or a pine tree or what you would expect to be a canopy tree.
So can we touch base on that?
Yes.
So you're looking for, at the time of installation, you want the tree to be at 12 feet with the anticipated height of 30 feet, is that correct?
Correct.
So typically on a canopy tree, the canopy also has a tremendous root system. So my concern is the placement of the tree in the front yard on many of the houses throughout Fort Lauderdale have a septic tank right there in the front yard. And whether it's the left or the right, there's a sidewalk, and then you have probably about a 10 to 15 foot gap between you and your neighbor's house. My concern is if you put it in the front yard and you decide not to put it near your septic tank because it's okay today, but 5-10 years from now, you're going to have a problem with that.
Right.
Hopefully we'll be all in sewer, won't have that issue. But if you plant it on the other side of your driveway next to your neighbor's yard, and it's there for 4 or 5 years, your neighbor decides to go build his house and they go start doing excavation work, you might tap into some of those root systems. So I do have a little bit of a concern. So did you guys discuss any of that about?
So
You can't put it in the backyard?
Well, so the ordinance, the suggested change, or the LDC amendment, requires them in the front yard, but allows for if the property is particularly small, if the septic system is in the way, if there's just not room to properly plant a tree there, then you can submit an alternative landscaping plan, essentially.
All of them in Fort Lauderdale with septics in the front yard.
Right, so they could either do, sorry.
But we need to put the tree in the back.
So they could do the tree in the back, they could do a cluster of palm trees, which won't have the root spread that a oak tree or pine tree would have. Essentially, it allows the property owner to, if they can't add the tree in the front yard, they have some other alternatives to be able to both preserve trees or have trees on these properties without, you know, interfering with any of the infrastructure.
The situation with trees in Fort Lauderdale, unfortunately, there is no backyard. Most of them have no backyard. And again, if you want to, okay, we're going to put some shrubs around the house, we're going to, make it look a little nicer around the base of the home with the windows or whatever the case may be. All right, but what if I don't want a tree in my yard? I don't like breaking leaves, I don't like mowing leaves. I mean, I kind of have an issue with the tree, whole situation of telling me I have to have a tree when I have no place to put a tree. And pine trees are lightning rods, they're not canopies. Oak trees are beautiful, water oaks are going to grow faster, you're going to get more of a canopy, but you are going to have roots everywhere. I would like to see maybe if we could write that to where it could be, you know what, I'm going to put shrubs around my home instead of a big tree in my front yard. So if we could kind of come to a happy medium there, it'd be a little better, I believe. So just my opinion.
Mark, don't they have room for trees in the backyard?
Not all of them.
But the ones that have room, because I think y'all should have a tree, we don't want to let that king call.
Well, we're starting to sound like with all the rules.
We don't want Cape Coral either. And it depends on the placement of the house, depends on how much yard you have in the front or back. That's why we've offered that you can come in and ask for an alternative. And we've had so many parcels that have been completely clear cut that we're trying to avoid that. And the only way to avoid that is for us to proceed with these recommendations that we have tonight.
I think that we, Commissioner Wills, I hear what you're saying, but I think that we almost make said developers slow down or said home builders slow down a little bit instead of nuking and completely whitewashing a piece of dirt. They look at where there is a mature tree sitting there and they say we can build around said tree.
Well, and there's some, in the language, it says there's a credit for preserved trees as well. So if you have a really great oak tree on your property and you want to preserve that in building your house, then that tree can count towards your tree credits. So and on a 1-for-1, we're not going to go into like you have to have 5 inches of this tree to be able to equal 6 inches, whatever. some places go into really great detail with that.
But
This
you
is
just
a
said
one
they
for
have an
one.
option, right?
They do.
That's what I was asking, but the main thing I want to know, there's an option. Banyan Village, you might have a cabin street.
Yeah, but still.
Might not have nothing, so.
Yeah, Madam Chair, to that point that Commissioner Brooks was making, I mean, I get where you're coming from.
Yeah.
I don't want to tell you what you have to put, but at the same time, we're trying to, I mean, it's where we are now. We're seeing a tremendous amount of development. We're trying to keep that character and not have whitewash where they come in. And I hope this gets pushed into Monterey as well, so they won't start just snatching everything out of the ground that's there, because I almost think it's criminal when we kill those mature oaks or mature pines like that. You know, here during the Civil War.
Then it's up to the builder to put trees in, and then they just pass it on.
Yeah, and it also depends on how far back the house is.
So,
That's up to them.
Well, as long as we have a, like Ms. Simler said, we have an alternative. As long as there's an alternative, we're fine. Well, some of those lots, there is no room for a tree, there's just not. Now, some of them, they have a green belt, they have more room, but once you put your little house on said lot, you put your little garage on there, and then you add your little screen room on the back, you're almost fighting for a setback just to get your screen room built, so. As long as there's an alternative, I don't have a problem with it. I like that.
Just put a small tree.
This also caps the number of trees at 2 trees for the parcel. So, like I said before, we had originally intended to do it sort of a scaling number of trees with the size of the parcel. This would just cap it at 2 for larger parcels. And those are just residential, so it would be the RG districts and the RR districts.
Honestly, the biggest thing on here is the lighting. I'm so glad you guys have tackled that. It's been staff on that it's been a sure battle, I'm sure. But that's the biggest complaints I get is my neighbor moves in and he moves in from the city and he puts a light up and my bedroom's lit up.
Yep.
So I'm really glad we're addressing the light situations in our communities, the rural areas, Fort and it could be, I don't know how many we have out in Pelton, it's got the same issue. Some of y'all may be able to speak to this, but there's a lot of people through the Fort area, when the new person came in, they lit them up. So they're like living in the dark, and all of a sudden we got a Q-beam coming through the window. So I really appreciate the time and effort staff's put into this.
So the rest of this is just about shrubs and then required green space. So this is essentially to ensure that you don't pave your entire front yard. We want to make sure that there's some green space, whether it's plants or grass, and it's a third of what would be the front yard. So I'm not telling you that you have to have, or we're not telling you that you have to have 200 square feet of green space. It would be a ratio of whatever your front yard actually is. Driveways are going to have to be stabilized, and essentially that brings it to, it mirrors the language that we used for the commercial vehicle amendment that we used, or that we passed last year. And then it would require pedestrian connections from the sidewalk or the driveway to the front door, essentially making it so that you would have some place for, if someone is visiting you, to walk to your front door, formalized area. And then irrigation. So we're not going to require irrigation, but we want to encourage it to make sure that your landscaping stays healthy. So based on the analysis in the Comprehensive Plan and Land Development Code, we have found that the proposed text amendment is consistent with the intent of the Comp Plan and Land Development Code, and we recommend that you adopt the ordinance. I believe you received a revised version at paper copy at the beginning of the meeting.
Once again, this is a public hearing. Anyone from the public wishing to speak? When you come to the podium, please state your name and address.
Hello, Sonia Lee, fellow community. Just a couple questions, because a couple of us have questions back there about this. What exactly community are you talking about? Entire Henry County, or is it like the city of LaBelle or city of, what exactly territory are we talking about?
It would be the entirety of the county.
The entire county?
The entire county, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
We're trying to, some of the issues we have is like, again, folks are coming in that used to having street lights all over the dang place, and most of us that live here all the time, we don't want a street light, period. But so we're trying to fix the situations where that's what's happening. They'll come into a rural area, they'll light the whole place up. So, and that goes back to the dark skies as well. There's so much illuminations we need to keep on your property and not mine, so we're trying to
And in
address
this
that.
situation, Commissioner Mills, I'm talking more about, we're anti-lights, no lights out here. We have a lot of people that come out here to look at stars, stargazers, those type of people. So we're definitely, what I'm talking about landscape is our question here. So, okay, we'll pick on LaBelle right now, because Felder, we're mainly a lot of rural, and we have a lot of trees and things like that. But it's, somebody built a house in a small lot, and what if I don't want a tree? What if I'm not a tree hugger? What if I want concrete? I mean, now and again, this just goes back to people's public and rights. These aren't gated communities with, I mean, this is a difference between a house and a county and a gated community where you abide by all of the fees, you abide by the regulations, you abide by the site developer doing the plans. Again, I agreed with that, Commissioner, about you could interrupt the septic system, everything else. So again, you're now dictating to me a certain plant. Okay, is it only oak trees? Did you put parts of plants in there that only dedicated? Or if I wanted a big old banana tree or some goofy whatever, I mean, do they have a right to put any plant they want in there? In their greenery, if you want greenery?
Yes.
Can I please? So, Ms. Sonia, I think the biggest thing that we're trying to prevent is we don't want to be coming across as, this is the heavy hand of the county and this is what you can and cannot do. But what we're trying to prevent is we have a tremendous amount of development that's coming in right now, and they're whitewashing everything. They're taking out pine trees that are 100 plus years old. They're taking out oak trees that are 200 plus years old, and they're gone like this with no questions asked. And so I understand what we're all saying. That's my right. I bought the dirt. I should be able to do what I want with it. But I think there's got to be a happy medium in that. And so we're trying to put on paper a rule that says essentially you have to take your current landscape into consideration when you buy said property and you put your home on there. And we're hoping that in putting a tree requirement in there that has magnitude or has size to it, that will be a catalyst to prevent a complete erase of all of the old mature trees, which in my opinion, and I think everyone would agree, that devalues an entire neighborhood.
And they're very important.
You know what I mean? And so we're trying to find a way, a tool, if you will, to be able to stop that from occurring all the time. At the same time, to your point, I hate an oak tree. I remember when I was a little guy, it ruined a couple roofs on different homes. And so, maybe you're a person that just wants to get rid of tree. You don't want a tree in your entire yard. Well, now you do have to come to the county and you have to present essentially a landscaping plan that says, this is what we're going to do to have said greenery around our house, and this is what it's going to look like. And I understand what you're saying. It is heavy-handed from that perspective, but I think if we're not careful, we're going to have a lot of quarter-acre blocks that are completely void of any greenery whatsoever. There's going to be a lot of sand. There's going to be a nice little spec home that's put on there. They're going to sell it for as much money as they can possibly sell it for, and the person that developed that is going to be gone.
Well, how about this idea? And
Yes,
this
ma'am.
is just a total idea, because when they purchase the property, there is a survey involved. So in some of the surveys, and then if you already know that this place is going to be residence or something like that, why can't they come up with some kind of plan that when they're purchased, somehow that they know that they have to keep some trees, like ahead of time, some regulation, they have to keep some greenery, and that way it can be marked on the surveys, so then when they plan their houses, then they're not destroying the greenery that you're talking about, so you're keeping your native greenery and you're not allowing them to destroy the whole land ahead of time. I mean, there's some thought to do with the surveys that can help with some of this.
And that's already in place.
I think that's
It's already in place. The ideal here is to have some type of greenery up on a new building or a new home, or where it's not all concrete, but that's already in place.
Okay.
So that's in place. I think we did that
And then
last
one
year.
more last thing, which is the biggest burden that I've seen in every county and every homeowner and every association and every commercial business, and I'm fixing to have to deal with this, is that You require by law that everybody have landscape, but then in a year or two, it can all die, look ugly, and then it does not have to be replanted or maintained. That is a huge issue. Why make somebody spend all this money on all this landscape and it just dies and then looks ugly and half of it's there and half of it's not? You know, it's either make them do it and then make them maintain it, or again, it's irrelevant.
Ms. Sonia?
We have addressed that, and Margaret?
No, we haven't.
Yes, we have, because
No, we haven't. We're right out of the gate. We said we're gonna take the irrigation requirement out.
Well, it's not a requirement for irrigation, it's an encouragement. But for the, well, two things. So the landscaping has to be maintained in perpetuity. You're gonna have to have one tree and 10 shrubs for the entire duration of the property's existence. So they would be required to keep the landscaping after the, 2 months after the house was built or whatever. It would have to stay forever, at least in the same capacity.
Are you talking about commercial?
Yeah, I
No,
think you're talking.
she's just saying, are we gonna,
She's saying it.
what she's gonna say is we're gonna enforce it.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day.
Commercial, like all these buffers we're telling them to put in and everything, well, somebody's gotta go back and check them to see if they maintain them.
That's what she's saying, are there
That's
gonna be
what
upkeep?
look at all those businesses along going to LaBelle, and all their shrubbery's dead, there's dead trees flipped over, and, I mean, it's not maintained. And then if you're taking out the rule about they're not required to have some kind of little timer or something, and after the 2 months, I planted my tree, I'll sign off on it, 2 months has passed, well, the tree can die. So you're still back in the same situation, and you're trying to fight right now, you're putting yourself back in the same situation.
Extremely valid point, ma'am.
But they gotta have, if they don't have irrigation, they won't have anything.
I'm sorry?
If they don't have irrigation, they won't have anything.
They just talked about it was taken out of their recommendation.
And then if you have irrigation, like in Porterville, you gotta have a well because you can't afford the water.
So for residential, the irrigation is optional. For commercial properties, you have to have irrigation to be able to maintain the landscaping. And in either case, if you did not maintain the landscaping, then it becomes a code compliance issue.
Which is all valid, exactly what Sonia said. It's gonna be a matter of making sure they do actually do what they're supposed to do, and that's the whole thing. We can sit here and we can say, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, but the fact is, Commissioner Turner, you are 100% right. We've gotta have the tools in the toolbox to go back and say, you didn't do what you was told to do, now you have to do this. The whole thing with the trees and shrubs is, and really that's what's happened, they're coming, they're just clear cutting everything. They're taking everything out. Back to the survey, she did say we could get credit as far as the tree there, so we're gonna build around this tree or whatever the case may be, because I'm one of the world's worst, to be honest. I love trees, I love the woods, but the fact is, when I got my property, I didn't want anybody coming in there and tell me, you're gonna paint your house this color, your curtains are gonna be that color. So I get it, all that, that's the reason I'm real skeptical, reason I said if you have an alternate, some kind of alternative, okay, we can work with that, so. But again, it goes right back to what Commissioner Turner said. We are behind on making sure that we keep those situations taken care of, so.
Well, thank you for your time, and on behalf of the fellow community, we're glad to have y'all here today.
Thank you for having us.
And residents show up.
I was going to mention that tonight. I really appreciate everyone coming out. The meetings, I hadn't made the last couple in the last few months. I played hooky and went off with my wife, so that kept me out of trouble at home. And if I can stay out of trouble at home, I'll come to the next meeting. But I do appreciate everyone being here tonight. And I would really appreciate before we close out, we will have an open floor. If there's anything you'd like to discuss concerning the area, I'd appreciate someone if you'd like to do that. So.
We need a motion.
I so move. Move to accept.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Harris, second by Commissioner Glazer. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. At this time, we at staff report. Mr. Mark.
Yes, so we.
State Road 80.
Right, so we have the developers agreement for State Road 80 water and wastewater utilities. I gave you the overview in the books, but then give you updated information this afternoon. So it's a three-party agreement. It's county, city, and the developer. The developer's doing all the work, paying for it initially. By the work, I mean water and sewer lines from the existing points of connection at the city of LaBelle all the way out to the furthest extent of the county line, where the Lee County line is. And so it'd be on the south side of the road. The developer will do all the work, and then as far as repayment, he'd get partial repayment. The county would pay $400,000, basically through ARPA money that's kind of been reallocated and made available. Am I correct about that? And then the rest of the payback would be by the city by virtue of connection fees that they receive from other customers who connect. A portion of that would go over to the developer until he was paid back. So the agreement is not completely final. There's still a couple loose ends, but as far as the county's obligations, that's pretty well settled, and so that's why we're asking you to approve it with it to be signed later, so long as the county's 3 obligations remain what I'm telling you in a minute, which is you would be designating basically the whole western portion of State Road westward out of the city of LaBelle to the county line. The State Road 80 corridor would be the LaBelle's service area for water and wastewater in the unincorporated county. And so there was a map. It was at your places there. It's in color. It's a pretty broad area. It goes up to the river and includes the city limits out to the west, goes south of 80 a little bit. But that whole corridor would be city of LaBelle service area. Second thing is that you would be committing to adopt an ordinance mandating new development that has service available to it would have to connect. So that's an ordinance that would come back to you later after we publicly advertise it and all that. So new development, so that's not existing development. New development would be required, compelled to connect. They could not decide not to. And so as far as whether it's available to them or not, it depends on whether the amount of demand they have, for potable water. If it's less than 350 gallons per day, it has to abut, the line has to abut their property. And then if they have more than 350 gallons per day, it's abut or within 50 feet, if there's an existing easement that would get you there. And then for subdivisions, commercial subdivisions, industrial, manufacturing, the larger uses, they would have to connect if they're within 1/4 of a mile of the line if there's an easement to get them there. And so, so that's the second requirement that you'd have to do. And then the third requirement is to pay the $400,000 when the developer is completed with the infrastructure. So with that, we're asking for you to approve execution by the chairperson after the agreement is totally finalized.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Iglesias, second by Commissioner Harrison. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. There's nothing on this mark. We're gonna go on down. Jennifer?
Yes, the next, Emily, did you want to?
Emily?
The next item before you are the federal earmarks that Emily Hunter will propose.
Good evening, Commissioners. For the record, Emily Hunter, Communications and Legislative Coordinator. So these are requests from staff, proposed asks for the federal earmarks this year. These are similar to the state appropriation request, but on the federal level. So the requests that we outlined are listed in the staff report. The first one is $700,000 for mental health resource centers on both sides of the county. We've been working on opening a mental health resource center in LaBelle, looking for an intake staff person that would sort of guide people to the different providers that we have in the county. We have various mental health providers that service the county, but not everyone knows who those organizations are. So we would like to have a staff person that's available to sit in what would be the LaBelle Resource Center, and then the Clewiston. We're working on opening a United Way House in Clewiston as well. We've not had a United Way House in Clewiston for quite some time. So having our mental health providers housed on both sides of the county, and also, as you all probably know, we have telehealth services in Hendry County, but a lot of folks in the county do not have adequate Wi-Fi broadband services. So we'd like to have a space in those centers
where they could have a private area, make an appointment to have their telehealth services in that location. So that would be the first request. The second request is for the Port LaBelle Utilities wastewater treatment plant expansion. This is the PD&E phase for $1 million. We've made requests on the state level and on state appropriations, as well as DEP grants, and we've not received any funding for that at this time. And then again, for the Port LaBelle Utilities gravity sewer line repairs, we did receive $200,000 for that from the state appropriation request last year. But we're looking to ask for $1 million on a federal request. We will be seeking DEP grant funding for both of these requests as well. So this won't be our only avenue of funding requests, but we would like to try and get really as much money as possible from any avenue that we can for Port LaBelle Utilities, given the growth that we're experiencing.
So are we going to do like the legislative request for state of Florida? Are we going to rank them and put whatever order we want them in? Or are we going to just go up for all three of them? Or?
Well, the way we understand it is we give them all three because Diaz-Balart's office, they receive a request from their entire district, and then they're all in different buckets, right? Mm-hmm. So mental health is going to be in one bucket. We might want to rank our plus 1 and 2.
Actually, those are in 2 different buckets.
Oh, they are
as
2
well.
different
Yes.
buckets. So I think we can submit them, and then they're going to decide what they push forward. And they're all in different buckets, so at least it gives us, 3 different opportunities.
I think our biggest push should be this septic to sewer for sure. Agreed. With everything going on in the state, the way the water treatment in different areas we've had all the complaints with, that should be a no-brainer.
It's something we did in the past, I think we color-coded it, and I think that went very well to show we went from point A to point B when we submitted.
So I think there's going to be, for the force main, we did that, and I think at the network, we hope it'll either be the next meeting or the following, but we're shooting for the next meeting. You're going to get a whole presentation on Port LaBelle as a whole. You're going to get how much money we have. As we know, one of the developers paid a bunch of back taxes, right? So we have some additional dollars. We have a little bit of debt that I would like to propose that we go ahead and pay off. And then we're going to have a net difference. Shane and his staff are going to present the needs from the
Entire system, whether it's expansion, repairs, or extensions for the facility as a whole or the system as a whole. So I wanted you to all have that information at one time and not make decisions in piecemeal. And so in doing so, I think it'll be a big picture of where we're at. And then maybe Shane, to Commissioner Burke's point, we can have a map color-coded like what we have now, what we're proposing to request and move forward. Because I think we are going to have some internal funds for our most pressing needs. We have short-term needs, long-term needs. So our short-term needs to be able to go ahead and push some stuff out with the dollars that we have in hand.
Madam Chair, I move option 1, approve staff's request to submit federal earmark request forms and the recommended items.
Madam Chair, the discussion point towards it. Shane, Emily, why do we not want to ask for any federal FDOT dollars? For fill in the blank, whatever it may be.
I'm thinking County Road 835 or 846. We're falling apart pretty quickly. And I know that we have a plan in place, but why would we not want to put that out there? Infrastructure is kind of the key word right now across the nation.
Right, the Shane for the county, we have scrap and staff funding coming for 835 for like 3 different segments.
Yes, sir.
So they've been funding projects every year, meeting those needs. I would say the
scrap and SCOP are both federal funded that go to the state.
Not federally funded.
Yeah.
They're state funded.
They're state funded that go to the counties individually. Right. And that's depending on our state legislature rocks the coffers or not. What I'm talking about is giving our congressional member the ability to ask on our behalf for an earmark or a project that, listen, it touches the tribal boundary, it touches Broward, it touches Collier, it touches
we can get money
you can ask for a legislative appropriation for a segment of E35, but the state will give it to you as a
Scott funding pot first. It'll come out of that pot. It won't come out of a different pot. But we can ask for one.
Well, okay, let's throw 835, 846 out. We don't like those. 29 or Fort Deneau Bridge.
For 29, 29 won't go anywhere anytime soon because the state, they originally had different segments. I think there was 5 of them from State Road 82 to Cowboy Way.
Yes, sir.
But they deleted the PD&E, so they'd have to redo a PD&E. They rescinded it, they had to do a new PD&E, and then, so they're not gonna fund any construction or anything. You could.
Was Fort Deneau Bridge included in the bridges? I know what you're talking about with the infrastructure package that was just passed through.
I don't think it was. I don't think it was.
Most, what is it,
You think it was? Yeah.
impacted bridges or something like that. And I don't know
But I think last year's ask as it relates to Fort Deneau Bridge just went to the state level, right? We didn't even ask. No, I'm wait, 2 years ago.
I think it was a couple years ago. It didn't even, because that price tag was thinking 13 million.
And so, and I know I think you have OA and K looking at putting up.
We have KCA.
Yeah, so you have them looking at putting an estimate together, but what I'm saying is I'm just saying,
It's
let's,
worth asking.
yes,
I have
exactly.
no objections to doing the bridge.
Not to beat our chest, but there was a time when, 80 was not going to be expanded until 2035, and there was 0% ability to deal with the 80-27 intersection. And in about 5 years, we had it all done. So I think, if you don't ask, you don't get the date, but if you do, there's a chance. So I would just like to see y'all and staff internally. Shane, I don't know what your biggest infrastructure need is. I know what I drive and what I see and what I hear, and it jumps out at me pretty loud. And I know we got a tremendous amount of cane trucks, and every year we have a problem on a couple of those different turns. I'm not saying you can fix that, but it's just something to think about, and I think you ought to be asking. I think this is one of those easy victories where, we quietly hammer on the Corps of Engineers, and we talk about 720 going from Glades to Hendry, and you give Congressman Stubbe and Congressman Diaz-Balart the ability to work together on fixing that.
We do have funding for County Road 720.
Just our portion.
Just our portion. Yes. And the state Glades County would need to request for their side. That was done, believe it or not, back when President Obama was around through the America Recovery Reinvestment Act. And I want to say they did the whole stretch, but it's all fell apart.
It has. So I'm just throwing ideas out there at y'all for y'all to think about. Obviously, you're the experts in the room as it relates to compiling those documents and stuff, but I really think it's something y'all to take into consideration. So I would just ask that we put that into the make of the motion as for staff to be able to come together. You may not have anything on this round, but it's kind of a biannual process. So that's it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
We can add that to the motion.
So we're going to motion for option 1, added to the motion, is to reach out to DOT for infrastructure?
Yep, just infrastructure in general, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So it'd be reaching out to.
What staff in-house thinks you would want to add to that list, or the plan that you would want to see pushed forward.
And reaching out to Diaz-Balart's office to see where that could potentially fit.
Yes, ma'am, and I think a great opportunity for our county administrator to talk to Glades counties and say, hey, what are one of yours, and if there is something, just like what we did, I'm gonna tell y'all, Glades County getting funding, whether people want to acknowledge it or not, Glades County getting funding had a lot to do with us saying this is going to be a cohabitated space on the north end of the river. And so I think when you start getting Stubbe, who has juice, and Diaz-Balart that are in there, I think you'll see some stuff happen. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Wills, second by Commissioner Glaze. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next, we have the installment of block cameras. Am I right?
Good evening, Commissioners. Thomas Vaughn, Special Districts Coordinator. Some time ago, I was tasked with compiling a list of locations.
Not to cut you off, Mr. Vaughn, but I make a motion to approve the purchase of the flock cameras, allow Operation Big Brother to come into place, and I saw your locations for the installation of the cameras. So.
Second. Is there any additional locations you would like?
I'm going to open the floor for discussion.
Yeah.
I'm for the cameras. I think I had part of the biggest problem with this. That's per camera. So, that's quite a bit, but I did find out that we can move the cameras without purchasing as many cameras, and you can move them.
You want to purchase more, Mr.
No, I want to purchase less.
Okay.
But because it's 25.
You like the 6, Ms. Burke?
Right.
Okay.
No, not really.
Okay.
Because I'm looking at the amount that the cameras cost, but I found out we can't move the cameras. They don't have to be stationary in that one place, to rotate some of the cameras, to bring down the cost some.
They can be moved at any time.
I absolutely hate that we're having to do this, but it's a sign of where we are. I'm so disgusted with Hooker's Point, old 27 and Art Lawrence.
Yeah.
It's a calamity every time you turn around, you know. And if we were to send staff out there to fix that, or we were to send staff out to fix Rogers Road every time, you know, you're tens of thousands of dollars on the year.
Yep.
I guarantee it. That's a conservative.
They'll start busting some of these people.
The
So,
only other option I would say if we limit it to a year and then break it back.
so Ms. Bird, you want to just do 4? I'm all about doing the 6, but I'm all.
I like the 6, but maybe just for a year and then break it back because of the cost.
Yeah, we can cancel at any time, is that right?
They're for a year.
They're for a
It's
year.
for a year.
Yeah.
Yes,
We need 2. We need 2. In my district, we need 2.
I think most of us asked
I
for
need
2 or
two.
3.
So that'd be 4.
And I'm thinking that the 2 need to road, you know, you put them out a couple places, and, you know, we need to hear from the Pioneer community. Where are y'all angry about? Flaggles kind of really, in my opinion, doesn't have an issue that jumps out, but I could be corrected by some constituents out there. But, you know, I think that this is going to help personally.
Well, it's gonna help more than just Madam Chair, it's gonna help more than just a garbage issue. I mean, we got so many people coming in and sticky fingers borrowing stuff. This is gonna catch them leaving out of the areas with that as well, so.
You know, our Lawrence has been a tumultuous situation with speeders.
Wheeler Estates has been horrible, and so has Church Road over there, that you get run over there.
Yeah, same thing with our Lawrence.
How many did you do,
At least 2. We can move them wherever you wanna move them,
So that's
That's still
6.
6.
but
So
we're still 6.
Just to remind everyone, we're proposing to pay for this out of ARPA funds for the first 2 years.
Okay.
So then it's year to year, as Mr. Vaughn was stating, so if, you know, after that, if you want to pull it back,
Okay.
Or buy additional.
right.
Well, why couldn't we do this, buy the 6 cameras? If an area is not being targeted, we can move it to an area that is.
I dig it.
So that way we're good.
So it's 6.
6 is enough?
Yes, ma'am, I think so.
Are you happy with the locations listed?
To start with, we can always move from there.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, the idea of having Port LaBelle have, and Banyan Village have 2 is because there's only 2 roads in and out. And they've been having a lot of illegal dumping out there over the years, so that was the idea of having 2 in that area.
I moved to purchase 6 cameras.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Hill, second by Commissioner Wills, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Any old business? Ms. Jennifer, you have anything?
No, ma'am, thank you.
This is a public hearing. Anyone from the public wish to speak at this time may do so. We thank you all for the members that came out tonight. It was a good number. We appreciate you coming out to take the time just to hear us. At this time, we're gonna go business by district. Commissioner Glazer.
I don't have anything this week.
I'm just gonna take y'all's time then. I'm just kidding. Again, thank you all for coming out tonight. You know, between the text and the calls, it's nice we stay in contact. Whenever there's issues, I get the information right away. One question, Shane, is did we get any feedback on the intersection? I was asking you to look into on Helms 29. Did we get anything back as far as maybe lighting or something different as far as? And I know people's not paying attention. I get it, but I'm just trying to find some way to bring a little more awareness to that intersection.
No, sir, I have not had a chance to look. Last we spoke, I was going to talk to my design consultant. We have a meeting tomorrow.
Right.
So
Okay.
won't have an answer.
Okay. Again, thank you all for showing up tonight. I appreciate it. It's great to see the folks from Veld. I knew just about all of you, so it's getting better. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Real quick, yes, ma'am. Shane, two questions. Shane, we rechanged our language to not allow for plastic culverts or HDPE culverts or poly culverts.
Yes, sir.
Why did we do that? What is your theory?
No.
I meant to call you on this, but we're here, so let's
My
chat.
reasoning, now, my theory was that if they do not have sufficient cover, they end up cracking, and when you get a permit for the culvert, you pay like $100, it's the county's for life.
Yes, sir.
So if it deteriorates, we replace it back. And we had problems with plastic culverts failing at the joints or cracking, because what they'll do is they'll put it in, and they'll only have like 6 inches of cover, or they'll drive a dump truck over, it collapses, they change it out. But when they pay that $100, it's ours, so they have a choice of corrugated metal pipe, or they can do RCP. Now, if they have a deep ditch, and they have like 3 foot of cover, then we'll make exceptions, and we've done that.
Now, I'm sorry. Are you saying if a Hendry County resident pays $100, the county will provide said culvert?
No,
They will
they
just
provide the
install?
culvert, but
Yeah.
it's ours, basically it's ours for life.
Yeah.
We take care of the maintenance of it.
Okay.
So like, for example, Case in Evans, if culverts have to be replaced, we go
Yes.
through, we start changing out culverts, the landowner doesn't get a charge again, we change them out.
Shane, if a resident right now had already purchased a plastic culvert based, I don't know if it's plastic, by the way, I don't know if it's poly or what, but this particular resident feels very confident in the quality of the product that they bought, would we be suffice to say that if you looked at the volume of cover that they were going to provide, you may be receptive to them installing that, or are you automatically anti?
The two, because you said a little extra, our instructions on our right-of-way permits, when they apply for a permit, it tells you the legal pipe that you're allowed to use and not.
Yes, sir.
So if they purchased a pipe beforehand,
Yeah.
without reading the instructions, that's their fault.
Yeah.
That's on them. However, if they feel really, really strongly about it, I mean, I can go over and look and check the cover, the depth, to confirm it will work.
Okay.
A lot of folks come in and go, well, my neighbor has it. Well, your neighbor had it when we were
X
around
number
2
of
years
years
ago,
ago,
but we've
yes.
since changed it because of problems we were having across the county.
So you would be receptive to having someone on staff go look and say, if you're going to put X number of inches of cover,
Right.
we may be
I
receptive?
mean, I'd be receptive to look. I'm not gonna guarantee that
Yep.
we're gonna approve it.
Okay.
So they may get mad, but
Okay.
sometimes we have deep ditches, I'm trying to think of a good place, but we have a deep ditch and it
No,
has
I get
3
it.
foot of cover.
I got it.
We're good.
Yep, I got it. Last thing, Shane, in Flagville, now that we're in kind of a period of a dry phase, have we been able to do any coordination with Flagville Drainage District to get out there?
I have not had a chance to go
Okay.
back and meet Mr. Bowers. I did meet him.
No, I'm not asking that. I'm saying, have you been able to instruct staff to get out there and lower some areas where we know we have some high spots?
Yes.
Okay.
We have took out high spots already in the
Okay.
canal, so I don't have to have them go back. There is one ditch that needs to be cleaned. That's supposed to be within the next 2 weeks.
Yes, sir.
And that, actually, I'll tell you where it is. It's from Shannon Lane on the north side of Mr. Beckett's. It's
Yes.
horrible.
Yep.
And it's on the to-do list right
Okay.
now. Crews are in Ladika
Okay.
trying to finish up some stuff.
Great. Okay, thank you so much, Shane. I appreciate it.
Well, we just want to appreciate staff. What you getting up for? It's my time. No, every year, the Lord bless somebody to have a birthday. So we want to wish Jennifer Davis, which they call JD, happy birthday. Let her know we are very happy that the Lord blessed us with her. We want to say happy birthday, Jennifer. Happy birthday. Thank you.
Happy birthday. Thank you. Happy birthday.
It looks good to be 54.
You too, Daryl.
Nobody but Mr. Harrison. Before we adjourn, Chief Nelson, we have an opportunity before you leave. Can I see you, please? At this time, meeting's adjourned. Thank you.